Not every film is for everybody. Let's start out this episode with a short excerpt that I wrote here. Picture this. You and your friends are walking out of a movie. Some of you liked it, though for entirely different reasons. Some of you disliked it, again, for entirely different reasons. And a pair of you aren't sure how you really feel about it. The conversation at dinner afterwards becomes the most interesting part of your entire week. Everyone shares their feelings and viewpoints, and what begins as a conversation about film turns into so much more. You end up talking about deeply personal, emotional items that you never would have thought to share. And despite some of the competing viewpoints about the film, you actually end up at the end of the day a little bit closer, a little bit wiser, and returning home with a smile. And I think that is really what going to the movies and consuming any sort of media really should be about. That should be the focus, right? You go, you intake something, and it's just enjoyment first, right? You can get deeper meaning out of it and anything else that may or may not kind of go beyond that depending on where your head's at and what experience you're looking to get out of the particular film or piece of art. That can all come after that. I feel like in today's industry, in today's world, there is such a pressure on every film to just be the next most game-changing film that there could possibly be. Like, if it doesn't make $300 million on, a $2 million budget, it's like, well, why even make it? Or even films that do have a big budget and do what anybody else would be like, wow, you made like $400 million. It's like, yeah, well, to break even, we needed 7. And it's like, what are we doing? How did we get here? We know how we got here, right? But we've now put ourselves in a position where it's like you have to make very, very, I wouldn't say insurmountable, but a tremendous sum of money just to break even on a big budget film that in any other decade really would not be a problem. And as we've seen, I feel like it's shoot out, I guess, for lack of a better term, a lot of the smaller films that I think just should be more readily available in theaters. Something I've enjoyed seeing is just like a regular comedy in a movie theater. There's been such a long time where it's like every movie that comes into theater that is, gets enough media and enough advertisements about it where they're like, okay, like this film is coming. And I know just about every film that's coming out into my local theaters, right? So I'm like, oh, hey, I want to go see this. And with my AMs to A-list, my ass is, in seats at least 2 to 3 times a month, premium formats usually. I make sure that I'm at least going to see the things that I care most about. And obviously, you can't possibly get through it all, right? There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many, times that work out between, your work schedule or whatever the case may be. So you do the best you can. And there are times where I feel like it would have been nice for me to go ahead and go see a particular film, but they just didn't have a showing in my area or one that I could get to. And I think that sometimes can also be a turnoff or an obstacle or a barrier for folks that would be like, oh, I'd like to go see that. But then you check the show times and it's like, hey, your showtime options are noon p.m. on a Wednesday when you're in the middle of your work day or 10:15 at night on Monday. And you're like, I can't. I have I got a job. Like, I can't pull that. Now, if you are one of those folks, maybe a 10:15 movie does work for you, then that's great for you. Full stop. And I know that we're going to get off track here, but I think this is going to be a normal thing with these shows. I have a lot of love for a late night film. I do. I've seen plenty in my time. I've done midnight showings when I was very young. And also a lot of times when I used to work retail, I would, sometimes I'd finish up like a 7 or 8 o'clock shift and then I would just, go to the movies because it was, right there. And it was really nice because I always felt like the vibe in the theater when you're there late at night was really awesome. You get a bunch of other folks that, you're just there to go have a good time. It's a little bit more relaxed, not nearly as packed. And sometimes that's what you want. And you can just have fun. And I've had a lot of fun with friends just kind of hanging out and enjoying those films at that time because there's respect in there is a little bit different, like there's a little bit more talking, but it's quiet enough that it's not interrupting anybody else's experience, right? And that also reminds me of something else that's been going on where I have heard reports, though I will say to date, I have been fortunate enough, and so has everybody else that I go to the movies with, has not had any negative experiences like the one I'm about to share. I've heard that theater etiquette has just been in shambles in several places. I don't know exactly how true that this is, but I'm inclined more often than not as I hear it to believe it more. From what I'm experiencing, it seems to be the times that I end up going on either a Tuesday evening or a Thursday evening or like a Saturday morning, I'm exempt from those experiences. The people that are there are people that really care about going to see a movie or who are up going to the movies to go see it early enough because that's what they want to do. And I love that. I think that's really awesome. I've heard that if you're going to see, a Saturday afternoon or, a showing that might just be at a more accessible time after that initial first premiere week, that the theater experience can just really be kind of like going to a playground in not a great way, where folks are on their phones and the lights are always flashing and there's chatter. I think is totally fine so long as it's like at a respectful volume, and I've heard a lot of reports where that's not necessarily the case, so I do get that. I think that that's also something that's discouraging people from going to the movies, which I feel like is a real shame. I think a lot of this really should be like, how can we make films more accessible? How can we make it so that we can get more folks into the theaters? And thankfully, my fellow Gen Zers, love you guys, are really out here leading the charge. We're the ones that are actively going to the theater on a regular basis and just supporting whoever our local theaters are as best we can. I say local theaters as it's literally almost all chains around where I am in Tampa. It's basically AMC. I mean, AMC for me is where it's at. I prefer them much more over Regal. And also, full stop, they got some pretty damn good food. I am not sponsored yet, but I love their hot honey pizza. Like, it's really good. I absolutely love it. Their popcorn's good and all this. Anyway, now that I've gotten like so off track for the last 5 minutes, let me reel it back in to exactly where I was heading on, which is that I feel like it's not only okay, but it should be encouraged again that we should have movies that are not meant to be blockbusters. If it happens to become a success, that's great. Or let me rephrase that. If it happens to become a financial success, that's great. But we have to remember that films, at their core, are just art, like any other piece of art. So it's really about like, okay, I've made this thing, this is out, perfect, here's the release, and this is great. I hope folks enjoy it. And I think there is not only, like I said, this pressure from the industry where it's like, oh yeah, but we can't make $700 million on this small film. And it's like, okay, probably not, but I think some folks would enjoy having like, I don't know, a date night movie for once. When was the last time we saw like a PG-13, rom-com that was in theaters that had some, I don't know, not A-list actors, because like I think at this point like we know who our A-list is. So maybe like a B or a C, but like somebody like a young up-and-coming actor. I think the closest one at this point was like Anyone But You. That was an R one, but I'm okay with that. R's, you want to do R-rated comedy? Great. Like that's bold, I think. Where are those films? Let's get them in the theaters, because it's so nice to just be like, go in and just go to the movies and go have a fun time. Like, we're there to just go and enjoy this experience. I love the theater going experience. By default, I just enjoy it. I like when the lights turn off and for at least 2 hours of total elapsed time of lights off time, nothing else in the whole wide world is in my head. I am just solely focused on having a community experience at the movies, possibly with snack in hand, but definitely with a drink in the cup holder, where I'm enjoying this film with everybody else is in the theater. And I think the last really, truly great theater experience, I shouldn't say that, but I think the one that most folks remember in recent memory has to be Avengers Endgame. I would argue the one after that would be the Batman starring Robert Pattinson. I felt like those two were just so unbelievably powerful, and now I'm remembering the other two, Barbenheimer. Those are the four in the last 6 years that I feel like have had the most profound impact. And that's the theater experience that I love to see on opening weekends, where we get people are coming and dressing up and enjoying themselves and having a great time and still being able to bring great energy, but also be respectful of the film and respectful of the audience around them. And I think that's really, really important. Having said that, I think we also get caught up in critiquing. And I think it's far too common that the first words out of our mouths when we walk out of the theater is what we didn't like about it. I make a conscious effort to do the opposite intentionally. If you go to the movies with me, you will very rarely, if ever, hear me say something negative about the film until maybe 30 plus minutes afterwards. I love the experience, and unless I really just did not connect with the film, you will not hear me really talk tremendously negatively about it, because I feel like I also understand there's a key difference between critiquing a film and then kind of like jabbing at it because the experience that you expected from this film and what your preconceived notions about it did not necessarily line up in a satisfactory way for you as you were watching the film. And I've had some conversations with folks where, I'm like, oh, wow, that was a great movie. And then they come out and they go, I noticed that they didn't really reload a whole lot. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, it's pretty common in an action movie, right? Don't you think? But yeah, I know, but it just, yeah, I mean, that just seems unrealistic to me. Right. Oh, totally hear that. Did that kind of throw you from the experience or something? Or no, and it's just, I mean, how are you able to, take all those hits and run and do all that? Like, it just doesn't quite seem, like super realistic. Like, I mean, come on, nobody could do that. And then I'm like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Like, if you saw an action movie, like, of fucking course, your action hero, right, your main character is going to do some things that probably aren't realistic, okay? Like, nobody misses that many shots, okay? Nobody hits that many shots. You ever seen the Ministry of what is it? The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare? The good guys never miss. Henry Cavill's character not one time misses a shot. The entire film. It's unbelievable. It's a great movie, but it's actually crazy. And I felt like that was like a fun thing, right? But if you're coming out of the movie and those are your types of critiques, and that's what I'm hearing in the following 20 plus minutes of you coming out of the theater, I'm like, what? Did you like the movie? And there are times when I've like pushed through that conversation to go like, okay, I get that there were some unrealistic elements of it. Yes, let's remind ourselves this is fucking fiction that we're watching here. But how did you feel about the movie? Like, did you like it? Let's get past that, right? Let's get past this little, call it maybe, nitpicking or whatever you want to call it. How did you feel about the movie? What did you like? What did you not like at its core? And almost every time you get, no, actually, yeah, I liked it, That was just a weird thing. And I almost wonder, well, actually, no, I don't wonder because I've had these conversations where if you don't ask those questions, then the impression they're left with is like, it was okay. And it was like, that's the thing that amazes me is that I feel like I have genuinely changed people's opinions about movies because I asked them like 5 questions that got them to get out of like this little quasi-critiquing, nitpicking thing and actually got them into like, how did I feel? Did I enjoy not just the experience of going to the film, right? There's that, so we got to sort of separate that out. Though I do think that there are certain things that like, it is a very different experience and it does impact your perception of how you feel about it and everything if it's on a big screen versus, your iPhone or your iPad or your TV at home. But again, I have had conversations with people where it's like if you're not even engaging with your emotions about how you truly felt about the film and what it meant to you, sometimes like a fun movie is okay. And that's all it has to be. And I feel like unless I ask those questions sometimes, that's the mindset that so many are stuck in. The amount of times you could have just enjoyed the movie had you just relaxed. Like go in, sit down, enjoy the film. It's okay for the movie to not be a perfect 10. I promise you, it's so okay to go to the movies and not witness like the greatest film you've ever seen in your life. It's okay. And I think we also really should kind of give a little bit more of a break to these artists and creatives that are making these films because we have to remember that these are not independent artists, right? Like they're not self-financing their films. If you would like to see people that are self-financing their films, go to your local film festival. I say as I've never been to mine. I would like to go. Usually work is very busy at that time. And it's anyway, but those are typically self-financed. Like you're talking about people that are using the stuff that they just have around and friends or people that are just trying to, put a reel together. So they're getting actors that are usually probably maybe not even paid with anything other than possibly food. I hope you're feeding your actors. Please feed your people. Feed everybody. You should just feed them. Okay. But like those are the films that you really would have that their visions from start to finish, right? The only thing that's really stifling them is what technical capabilities they got. Like, do they have the ability to do a complicated CG sequence? Some do. I've seen some shit in Blender that you're like, wow, you did this yourself. Like one person. Unbelievable. Amazing. Well done. And then other times, like, you see what they do with, models, just like they used to do in days of old, which, by the way, I think still look great. I think we should still use them models often. They're great. Use miniatures, all that stuff. I love practical effects. Please use them more. But like we gotta ease up a little bit on these creatives that are in the industry at that high level. Little bit. Okay? Because I think sometimes, especially when we see a theatrical cut, we may not be getting the director's full vision, the writer's full, input about all that stuff. And the story that ends up coming out may not have been the one that it was going into it. And sometimes I think that works well. Other times it's not. But again, I think that if you're going into the film, if you're going into the movies constantly, and at the first instance that something doesn't totally align with you, that now you're in critique mode, or you start being very critical of the film from that point on, like, just leave the film, I guess. I don't know. Or if you're going to do it, try and say something nice about it. Or if you don't, like, figure it out. Work with your emotions. Because I often wonder, like, are you looking for just an excuse to just, like, let those emotions out? Are you holding in a lot of negativity, or what is it? Because, like, the truth is, I don't think that so many of these films that have come out that just get a tremendous amount of hate under the guise of critique, which it's not. I feel like it's okay and healthy for the industry, honestly, and human, most importantly, for some films to stray from the norm or deviate from typical expectations. I think it's something that drives more connection, inspiration, and diversity in film selection. Most importantly, not every film is for everyone. Not every film is for every mood. We do not have to make things universally palatable. That's okay. I promise you, if you just diversify that, you'll end up making these other films shine a lot more. Give me a film for this mood. Give me a film for that mood. Give me a film for this type of occasion or this type of feeling that we're trying to evoke here. If everything's a drama, that's what we're going to get. Shake it up a little bit. Sometimes we want a feel-good rom-com because it was a long week, and we want to get our heads, out, like, get out of our heads and get out of our bodies for a little bit and just have a laugh, goddammit. Have a laugh. We just want to sit in the theater for 90 minutes to 2 hours and just laugh and enjoy ourselves or have fun. I've seen some stuff recently that Masters of the Universe is, like, not performing as expected. It's still making several $100 million, guys. And guess what? Audience scores are great. And I feel like we've pigeonholed ourselves in, maybe that's a bit extreme, but we put ourselves in a position where, like, you look at the audience scores and you're like, wow, audience really seems to like this. And it's like, well, it didn't make $700 million. So I guess it's a flop. And I'm like, no, the fuck it's not, dude. No, it's not. Like, it just didn't make the amount of money that the studio wanted it to make, okay? Most importantly is that people connected with the film. People enjoyed the film. I would like to go see Masters of the Universe because I like He-Man. And it seems like a great time. And I want to go laugh and enjoy myself. And I'm sure that seeing a bunch of bright, vibrant colors and cool stuff and, throwbacks to the cartoon are going to be awesome. I'm excited. So I just have to clear my schedule to go do it. Maybe I'll do it next week. I digress. Again, there's going to be a lot of digressing in these episodes. Other times we are, in fact, looking for a drama. That's a very valid reason, right? I know we're all excited for The Odyssey, I think. I know I am, writing a novel that's sort of related to it, but that's a separate thing, or maybe we're looking for something like totally, entirely unique that we don't really see, right? And maybe it's just me, and maybe it's a few of my friends, and we're interested in just seeing the experience that could come from seeing something that is totally out of the norm for us. And I think that's also what generates some of these really great conversations. Like I said in the opening, the beginning, right? You go and see this film, but there have been times where, like, you go and you go watch the film, and then, like, one of the best things I feel like is going to have a bite to eat or a coffee or something after the film. Oh, how I love that. It's just making an evening of it, I think is so nice, right? Like, I close my eyes and I imagine this. It's like a 6:30 show. Hi, how are you? Seeing everybody. Go in, do the thing, film ends at, maybe just before 9. Then you're looking around, you're like, I could eat. Can you eat? Yeah, I could eat. Could you eat? Yeah, I'm hungry. Are you hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. And then you go, down the street or in the plaza, there's always something open, and you sit down and you just have a chit chat for a while. 2.5 hours goes by, somebody checks the clock and you're like, oh my God, it's like 11 o'clock, got to get home. And then you make the plans to go see the next one. And that I think also creates that third space, right? Technically you have 4 because, like, the film would be 3 and then the restaurant or coffee shop, or I don't know what coffee shops are open at 9 p.m. at night, so maybe there's a day version of this, which there is. But, or watering hole of your choice is open and you go and have that conversation. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing that I would like to see happen more. Matter of fact, I think that we should see more coffee shops as part of the movie theater. I know they're expanding all their food options and things like that, but just put a little coffee bar in there. I know that like AMC, for example, has MacGuffins, and I think that that's great, right? That's a great cocktail bar. Totally get it. But it's in a unique space. Like you don't really see people, at least where I'm at in Tampa, you don't really see them hanging out like there. Like there's some tables, there might be like 2 people here, 2 people there. But what I'm imagining is something a little bit different. What I'm imagining is essentially something that is like it is its own truly, it's a space, right? Like it is sort of separated by some walls in a way, or like there's an open thing, but it signals to the people that this is a third space for you. Like your movie may not be for 3 hours. You could come in here, have a chit chat with your friends, have a cup of coffee, whatever it is, and then go see the movie. Or when you're finished up, then you can come right here and hang out. And maybe, they have on the walls like a, TV or two that's, running movie trailers and things and talking about the events and stuff like that. And maybe they have some conversation starters up on the wall. And I just think that something like that, I think would be great. Like I can close my eyes and picture it so clearly right now. And I'm sure somebody somewhere has built a Lego version of that. And I'm sure it's like really cool to see. Yeah, but just also in general, I think having an espresso drink, like just like some handcrafted coffee beverages at the movies would be totally awesome. And I think we would see some more like morning shows, which would be pretty cool. And I like that. I like a matinee. Get in, like have a little breakfast, maybe have another coffee thing in there. Movie's over, it's like 1 o'clock. I got the day. Maybe we all go out for lunch. I don't know. That sounds pretty nice to me. All that to say, diversifying the movie going experience with more films, I think will provide a tremendously positive shift in expectations. I think it's going to give folks the ability to go see more than just 2 or 3 types of movies. And it gives independent and small budget films a much larger audience where they can gain some traction and maybe even set some trends of their own or have some sort of growth. Like take a look at Obsession right now is just absolutely blowing up, or Backrooms is again having an incredibly, successful run. But I think when I look at those 2 films, which I would love to see, by the way, I think of something very, very key, which is the fact that audiences connected with that and audiences were driven to go see that film. And I did not see a ton of trailers. And I again, my social media, there's a new trailer that comes out, I have seen it. I know exactly what's going on in my theaters and what's coming in and what's going out, which is great. I didn't see a ton about that. Like the 2 of those movies were amazing to me in the marketing sense of that. It was like it seemed to me from the outside looking in that it was very much word of mouth. And I feel like there's something tremendously powerful about word of mouth, where when it's successful, there is truly nothing like it. For any of the marketing people that are watching this, first of all, thank you for watching. Please give me a very detailed or whatever explanation. Am I right or wrong? I'm always interested to know these things. But I feel like there's just something about word of mouth that really just speaks to people, where you're like connecting with your own communities locally and you're like, I'm excited to go see this movie. And because you and other folks are like, yes, that interests me, I would like to go. And now you kind of have like this human thing. And I think to me, it's like you're not being sold, and I love a great trailer, I do. But sometimes I feel like maybe some folks might feel like they're being sold because it is an advertisement. That's what it's for, is to get you into the theater, and not as like, oh, let me see, I'm excited about this film coming out. Like, let me see, a preview of what it is. They see it more as an advertisement instead of a preview. I feel like that's a very profound sentence. Chat, clip that. Oh, hey, that's the first laugh. How about that? You love to see it. But anyway, I feel like film is a sensory artistic experience. That's what it is. And it doesn't always have to be a narrative story, right? Look at Eraserhead, which, by the way, I could not get through like 10 minutes of, but some people go, that's amazing, and I love that. The American Film Institute loves it. I got a problem with that list of 100 films. I don't agree with it, like in a lot of ways, and also they should update it because, the last update I think was in like 98, 97. I feel like we should have one that gets done every 10 years. But anyway, not every film has to be a narrative story. Sometimes it's about just images and things on screen and soundscapes and an experience. That's what it is. Like abstract paintings are exactly that. They are abstract. It is an experience that is supposed to evoke some emotions in you. That is not a painting per se of a place or of people or anything, though you might look at it and you might see that and you might feel that. And I think film has equally a valid practice with that. I think when you're watching something in that experience, whatever your theatrical experience might be, I think you absolutely can have that. I think you can have that type of experience where you didn't necessarily go see something that had a beginning, middle, and end, but it did have thoughts and feelings, and it evoked something in you, and it made you think about things. And I think those films are just as valid and deserve a place in the theaters just as much as an incredible story or comedy or a horror flick or whatever it is. Those are all stories. So that was a bit of a redundancy, but anyway, and I think there just should be more opportunities for filmmakers to have some of these films shown as pieces of, sensory art experiences in theaters. I think of that. I think it's the Van Gogh experience where you walk into this room and like digital things of the paintings are like all around you and you're like in the paintings. And I think that's very cool. And I love the idea, especially now, all the things that we can do with creating digital worlds, things that we can render in so many different digital realms, not with AI, of course. I think that it would be really cool. It would be a great place for a lot of digital artists to really get a lot of opportunities to do something really unique, like getting people in it. I would love to see this with a lot of Studio Ghibli films. Like, imagine you're going into theater. Like, I think Screen X would be a great kind of like sort of blueprint for it. And you have that feeling of those worlds on all the walls, and you can just kind of enjoy that space. I think even just conducting regular human stuff in those spaces, I think would be great. Like, imagine like that's your coffee shop. They turn one theater into that's the coffee thing, or you have dinner in Studio Ghibli and they're playing the films or on the walls and you're just kind of like there and enjoying the thing. That's a sensory experience that I think would be really, really cool. Thought-provoking, I think. Meditative even. And I like to think sometimes of the movies where maybe the writing or the story or just something about the film might not have been all around up to snuff, up to what we think that it should have been, right? Everybody knows these movies, right? It's the movie where you're going, man, this thing was so bad, but it was great. And then it ends up being it's somehow is a cult classic, right? Like in my case, and I know that I'm about to get just barbecued in the comments for this. I am a huge fan, and I love the film Batman and Robin, starring George Clooney, Chris O'Donnell, Uma Thurman, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love that film. I love it. I've seen it so many times, and I watched it, God, on repeat as a kid. We rented it so many times. I love it every single time I watch it. I understand that it is so campy and silly and fun, and Uma Thurman plays like the best rendition of Poison Ivy. I feel like it is my favorite. It is the first time that I really ever saw her, and I just love her. I think she's so great as Poison Ivy, and I love just enjoying that film, and I love just seeing her in that role. However, I am very aware that a lot of people look at that film and go, that is the biggest piece of dog shit I've ever seen. It's like routinely on worst movies ever. However, not to me. And I think that is an important thing, right? Which brings me to one of the other major points, of which I have made somewhat clear in this podcast, is that we have to remember that it's not about good or bad. It's not about a binary thing about was this film good or was this film bad. I think we really should be looking at films and interpreting it as, how did it make you feel, and what did you feel like it was to you? When somebody asks you, was the film good or bad, it should always be through the lens of to you. Art is subjective, flat out. So let it be that. Because I think a lot of times you're talking to somebody, maybe they say that a film is bad. That turns that person off. Okay? Maybe you trust their opinion because, you're pretty close to it. Rightfully so. I get it. However, what if you're just completely wrong, right? Like, what if your interpretation of the film is so incredibly different because of your own life experiences that what you told your friend, who actually has a very different life than you, could have gone and enjoyed the film? So we just take a step back. Essentially, this is all through the lens of how can you experience the most joy possible. But that's my own ethos of my own life, which I think is a really great way to live, which is why I try to do it. But here's what's coming to my mind. I'm just going to say what's upstairs, and we'll see where this takes us, right? And then I'll return back to my notes here, and we can get on with that. I know I touched previously on negativity in terms of what's getting said about films and what's getting talked about in films after the movie. Hell, even in previews. Like, can we also, before I get into this, can we not release, like, reviews of films before the fucking film comes out, please? That would be great. Because, like, I got to tell you, if I'm going into the film, seeing a preview is one thing. Like, happy to see the preview and get excited about what I'm going to see on screen. I love that. But I don't want to see a rating anywhere near me. Because, like, it has impacted me. There have been times where, like, I've gone into a film and seeing, a rating where it's like, hey, it was a 7 out of 10 or it was an 8 out of 10, which, again, is pretty damn good, I think. But now I have that in my head before I go in the theater. And I've gotten very good at making the conscious effort of, like, okay, you need to separate that out. Like, that is not your feeling, your thought, your opinion about the piece. Go enjoy it for yourself. Go experience it. In a perfect world, I usually like to watch a movie about 3 times. I don't always get to do that. Rather infrequent up until it gets on streaming, and it's usually like if I really enjoyed a film or something about it, I'm like, I have to go back there. Once I watch it the second time, there is always a third time. The first time almost always is just to like sit there and take in the experience, enjoy the experience as much as I can, be present. There are times where right away I'm like, once was good. The second time, I'm looking for things, trying to figure out some more things, understand some things, interpret some more things. Third time is like, okay, I've gotten all the emotional elements. Now we want to get technical. But I also really care about film, which that's going to be a whole bigger thing that I'm going to end up talking about, where I'm actually going to do a series about film school, which I did go to. But because I was working the whole time and just under a lot of stress, I actually have a very difficult time remembering a lot of the things that I had learned. So not just this channel, but things that are going to happen on this channel, shows that I'm going to do here are actually to kind of like recall those things and then also teach myself new stuff. So you can see those books that are right there in the back. I have several film books there and another one that's on the way that I'm excited to share with you guys. So that's just an exciting little tangent that you've now gone on with me. So thank you for that. But back to films as a sensory experience and the bad films, quote unquote bad film that we all love. I think there are times where certain parts of a film stand out because they're really, really great, but maybe something else about the film wasn't, like, everything else just kind of didn't really do it for you. Like maybe it was that, like, this particular actor's performance. Like, I loved Uma Thurman, right? Maybe you too loved seeing Uma Thurman, but the rest of the movie did not connect with you and you just really didn't enjoy it, but you loved only those scenes. Okay. I think those have a tremendous amount of validity as well. I think that seeing moments like that, like not just Uma Thurman, I think, which is probably the best example, that I think has a very big influence on how I like to write particular villains. I love a sassy villain. I love it a lot. I love the villain who's always like a step ahead, uses their intelligence in a really awesome way. It's why I love Grand Admiral Thrawn. But sometimes even just one element in a film that positively impacted you or that made you think and made you internalize something and discover something else in the world, that's great, right? Like, that is a bonus beyond the fact that, like, you've consumed art. I think that is just huge. A recent example I would say would be Wuthering Heights. We are well aware that that film did not perform tremendously well. I enjoyed my experience with the film. I liked it. My critiques for the film, I think that actually it was just, I would have preferred a different order for the events to happen in. Like, if they told it in media res, meaning started at the middle, routinely worked kind of back to reveal certain things, and then you basically, sometimes you would push forward from the middle to completion. I think that film would have been received tremendously better had it done that. Having said that, I think that the most profound thing about the film, the two most profound things, were the costumes. 3. Let's just skip the numbers. There were several elements of this film that I feel like were really, really impactful that I think a lot of young filmmakers and young artists and just artists in general really probably felt impacted positively by. I would say that would be the set design. I would say that would be the costumes. And lastly, but I think to me most profoundly, was the use of color. This is the thing in general, which is going to be a whole separate episode. I think that we do not use enough color in film. Part of it is because we see a lot of dramas in theaters and they do not use vibrant color, which is why the viewing experience of Wuthering Heights was very nice. I was like, oh, that's a very nice red. Oh, it's a very nice green. Oh, look how nice that stands out. Like, that was a lot of it for me in that aspect. As somebody who loves film, I was just very appreciative of that. And I also just like bright colors. I do. As you can see by my shirt, it's very bright. And the lighting, which is very bright to make me look extra pretty. Certain films like that, even if they don't do well, like, you did something that people that are going to be in that industry in some way, whether it's their own community content or, maybe they do really big and great things beyond the scope of what they thought was possible for them and go, bigger than that. that actually might have been a huge influence for somebody. And so again, like it sort of goes back to and is rooted in just make the art. If not for yourself, make it for somebody else who might appreciate it. Like you may not make the film you're making right now, the piece of art that you're making right now, may not necessarily be the piece that is the most profound thing and amazing and successful in whatever way that you deem is fit. Maybe it's some part financial success, some part critical success, some part other success, people enjoying it. But what it does do is it inspires somebody, and somebody goes, that piece of art right there, I use that as a baseline for me. That is a core principle and a core piece of how I make my art. And I feel like as an artist, if I were to hear that about something that I made, every other piece of art, it was all worth it. It was all communally worth it for that. Which brings us to the last segment of this show, of which I have not made perfectly clear, which is different cuts of films. And there's a very specific reason for this, right? I know we are in an age where attention spans are short as hell. Like a goldfish has a larger attention span than we do sometimes, right? How many of us are sitting here watching TV and then you got your phone out scrolling? I can't hear without my subtitles. I know, I hear you. I also read you. I do. I thought about 3 different cuts. So first of all, we have the theatrical cut. A theatrical cut is obviously exactly what it is like. That's what ends up making it into the theater. It's the most common thing you're going to see. Sometimes they end up being truly the director's cut. I'll touch on that in a second. But this is the studio-approved one that actually gets out and goes, right? Then we get to the director's cut. The director's cut, this I think is really for the people that enjoyed either that particular film in the first place or just if you're a film person in general. I'm like, listen, give me everything. Maybe not like all the B-roll and then all the dailies and all the other stuff. Like I don't need, because who knows how many hours of footage you shoot during the course of a shoot, the 90, 120 or 6 months or whatever it is. But give me the whole story, like everything you really truly wanted in there from the start. That's essentially more of what a director's cut is, right? In the digital age now, I feel like there is no excuse. There is no reason we can't have multiple versions of the same film on hand. There should be a push of a button or, touch of a screen really, where if I want to watch Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2 as one cohesive narrative element, I can do that. I should just be able to do it. Or if I want to do a marathon, I should be able to just press a button and I'm going to watch all of Star Wars. And then instead of doing the credits, what you're going to do is immediately roll the crawl of the next one. That's what you're going to do. Or if I want to do this very unique viewing experience, guess what? I can do that. And I can really just go, I want to watch this. And at this point, do that. And at that point, go back to this and, do that whole thing. I would love that. You mean to tell me with all this technology that we got, we can't do that? Somebody needs to figure it out. Somebody needs to get on that. But the idea of a director's cut is to just provide, more sense of a story. So I think that for film folks, especially if a film was successful in the first place, like I'll give it a great example, would be like Dune, okay? There should be, pause on that. And the reason is because Denis Villeneuve is an incredible director. So a lot of times, like if you really are that good and people love your films, and like what's in the theater might actually be the director's cut anyway. Like Christopher Nolan's another one who gets that, and so is like Steven Spielberg or anybody like that. So those people, you're probably just going to get the director's cut pretty much from the get-go. So in those cases, then we would go to an extended cut, which is it's not quite everything, but we gave you some more. It's bigger than the theatrical one. It's just got some more stuff in it. So like there's sort of an overlap between director and extended. I promise this is all going to make sense in like 5 minutes or whenever I decide to be finished with this segment. Then we go to the layman's cut. This is not a real thing, but I would like it to be. This is a new concept that myself and my best friend came up with, right? And the idea is it's a 90 to 110 minute special, okay? Things are cut out and simplified as much as possible. There might even be different dialogue that's like easier to comprehend. Or scenes where the plot is recited and events explained a little bit further in depth. You may have heard that on some Netflix movies, they have to repeat the plot multiple times because everybody's on their phones. I think this is really helpful for very long-running TV series. Looking at you, One Piece, although I love you to death, love you so much, but not Sesame Street. You're perfect. Most recently done, like I said, with One Piece and their 1-hour specials that sum up an entire arc. So I think, again, this is really great for that, where you can go and basically take this extended tremendous amount of footage that you have of whether it's your show or a film, maybe it's a 3-4 hour thing, and you can basically just like cut it down to something that's, I don't want to, like, it's sort of a little bit more palatable might be the right word, but also I think it's bite-sized, a little bit more bite-sized, because I think we are in a day and age where some folks may not necessarily have 2, 3, 4 hours to sit down and watch a film, but they might have 90 minutes. They might have like 60-ish. So I think basically giving them a way to get into this a little bit more might also be helpful. Is kind of the idea behind this, right? I don't necessarily love it either, but I do think that just in where we're at, if it's going to help folks watch the movie, like maybe you enjoyed the 75-minute version. It really should be. It should be like 75 to 100 minutes, maybe not 110, right? It's a sub 2-hour mark. The amount of times that I've been in the movies with people that are like, yeah, they could have cut a half hour on that. And I'm like, you've obviously never been in editing class. You have no idea. I know what you think you can cut out. You don't have a clue. I don't believe you. You can think you can cut out half an hour of a 2-hour movie. You would be lost. You would be in absolutely Neverland. Can't happen. Nope. I don't think so. Can't wait for somebody in the comments to be like, hey, here is incredibly detailed advice and reasoning behind why you can cut exactly 30 minutes out of this very specific film with minute-by-minute substitutions, and here's why. So if you do that, first of all, thank you. I will print a retraction. But the idea essentially is like, I get that sometimes, especially we have a long drama at like 2.25, like especially once you crack 2.5, I feel like once you crack 2.5, you got to really earn every 15 minutes after that. We get to a little, special spot once you're like, if we know the movie's 3+ hours going into it, you could be in for a real treat. Because I feel like very rarely is there a movie that's like a 3-hour long that you're like, couldn't wait for that to be over. Except for Gone with the Wind. That was like more like 4. But again, just the bottom line with that was that the idea is to have shorter cuts for certain folks that just might be like, I don't have that much time, or I need something a little bit more accessible for me. So, hey, if it gets you into theaters and it gets you to buy a ticket and it gets you to go get some popcorn and it gets you to, maybe consume that, and then you go, hey, I'd like to watch the whole thing. All right. That's the sort of ethos behind that. I see I've got one more thing here. This is the inaugural episode, so we're just going to go and see whatever happens, right? I feel like if your main complaint about a movie actually has nothing to do with the story itself, are unbelievably technical, bonus points if you have, no actual true knowledge of the technicalities of filmmaking or potentially storytelling for that matter, and or suspension disbelief type stuff, meaning like you don't like musicals because nobody would just start breaking out into a song in real life. There are thousands of videos of people breaking out into songs in real life. So, maybe not a dance number. Actually, they have those too. So even that's kind of another key example would be like, this character didn't reload his weapon. Okay. And that just ruined the film for you? I don't believe you. Like, you didn't like it for other reasons, but why are you harping on that, right? This is the category that we're talking about here, okay? If those are your complaints, take a beat. Big loss of points here if you're complaining about a movie you've never seen. Like if you read an article and you're now talking to all of your friends and your peers about how ridiculous this thing was, and you haven't even gone to go see it yourself, don't waste my time. I'm going to ask you, have you seen the movie? If your answer is no, I'm going to be like, stop the talking. All done. Stop the talking. Like, go watch the movie. Try and leave the articles aside. Watch the movie. Process your thoughts. And then maybe read those articles and compare how your feelings lined up with those. Did they? Didn't they? Have a conversation about that, right? Now we're getting somewhere. I guess the true bottom line of this whole episode, of the many, many tangents that we went on today, is that movie that you think sucks, that item that you, just grind your gears, somebody else loves, and god damn it, that is okay. For the love of movies, live and let live. Enjoy the films. Enjoy the experience. Go talk to your friends. Go get some friends and go see a movie. Have a bite to eat afterwards or before. But most importantly, go to the movies. See you next time.